I would say unprecedented, but I feel like we've been using that word a little too much in the past few months. We've just seen unprecedented attacks from Israel on Lebanon, including the assassination of longtime leader Hassan Nasrallah in just the past 48 hours, and now intelligence coming in that Israeli is launching ground incursions into Lebanon, and remains to be seen if this will be part of a larger ground invasion, and really what the end of game is for this. Does it mean occupation of southern Lebanon, as Israel has done before? So very, very scary times up ahead. But I suspect that they will continue for the foreseeable future, and not just the next 24 hours, as Israel's adversaries sort of recuperate, and rethink their strategy as they've suffered enormous losses in the past couple of weeks.
Well, to that exact point, Natasha, it's not just Nasrallah that has been killed, but a number of top commanders for Hezbollah. Obviously, we saw the explosions earlier this month that took out walkie-talkies and pagers, things that they were using to communicate. How capable is Hezbollah of fighting off a potential ground invasion that Israel may choose to pursue? Or are they likely to be fortified or more willing to go to drastic measures to retaliate because they've taken such heavy losses?
There's the short-term game, and then there's the long-term game here. So I think that Hezbollah has a lot of territory to recuperate on, including in Syria, where they have forces as well. But in the near term, it will be very difficult for them to mount an attack on Israel. That said, if Israel decides to actually mount an invasion into Lebanon, they will be mounting an invasion into a country that Hezbollah has had about 18 years to prepare for. So we're talking about tunnel networks. We're talking about still tens of thousands of troops. And frankly, Israel's actions in the past year have created a really limitless supply of soldiers, both in the region and beyond. So again, I think it's more than the next 24 hours that we're witnessing very sort of scary escalation.
Sure sounds like it. And when we hear from the Pentagon, Natasha, that we're deploying what they call a few thousand more forces in the Mideast, is this about force protection for Israel? Are we concerned about this escalating to the point where we're going to have Americans actively involved in helping to defend Israel, whether it be in the air or on the ground? And who are these forces? What are they going for?
Well, it's not just these thousands of forces. There's two carrier strike groups, one in the Mediterranean and one in the Red Sea.
Why do we need
so
more?
this is a very Yes, and there's overwhelming force posture on behalf of the United States. I am guessing that the United States wants to avoid any kind of direct alliance with Israel on this, but will provide them with the necessary weapons, including the bomb that took out Hassan Nasrallah just a couple of days ago. So I think that the United States wants to avoid an escalation in which they will have to take a direct part in, as Iran has over the past few months. But it remains to be seen if they will be dragged into a more full-fledged war. But I suspect that they will, talk to U.S. citizens on the ground throughout the region to evacuate and try to defend assets throughout the region as well.
Well, we heard President Biden. He was asked about this when speaking from the White House earlier today. He was asked if he was aware of and comfortable with Israel's plan for a limited ground invasion of Lebanon. He said, "I'm more aware than you might know, and I'm comfortable with them stopping. We should have a ceasefire now." Do you see any incentive for Israel to agree to a short-term ceasefire at this point, or for Hezbollah to do the same?
We've been hearing the same thing from the White House for months now on Gaza and on Lebanon. And supposedly U.S. diplomats have been working tirelessly for a ceasefire on both fronts for months now. But we also haven't seen any kind of tangible leverage being used with Israel to get to that ceasefire. And it looks like we've just seen Israel escalate more and more each day, each hour, but very little on the U.S. side to really curb or rein in Israel. In fact, as you mentioned, thousands more troops being deployed, carrier strike groups. it looks like they're defending Israel, that this is their war, essentially. And so I think it remains to be seen if Israel themselves will take the decision to launch a full-scale ground invasion of Lebanon. But it does not seem as though the United States is willing to really rein in Israeli actions at this time or any time prior.
Well, you just answered my next question as the administration attempts to influence the outcome here. Natasha, I'm curious as well about the day after. Lebanon is not Gaza. And I wonder if Israel has a plan, if it were in fact to destroy or decimate, somehow eliminate Hezbollah, a plan to deal with the nation that would be left over.
I mean, what we've been seeing is decimated countries. Lebanon, Yemen, the port in Yemen was recently attacked also by Israel, and Gaza. These are not territories that can withstand another humanitarian crisis or another conflict on top of everything else. And it doesn't really seem like there's a day after plan for any of them. We've seen Israel and U.S. officials talk about how Lebanese politicians could take this moment of weakness amongst Hezbollah leaders to really take the helm in the Lebanese government for the first time in years or decades. But it remains to be seen how that plan actually plays out. Hezbollah is still the most powerful force on the ground, and they will assassinate leaders that go against them, and they've been known to do so in the past. So I think just calling on Lebanese leaders to stand up to Hezbollah is not going to be enough for a day after. And we've already seen hundreds of thousands of people internally displaced, some of whom are actually going into war-torn Syria right now for refuge.
Natasha, we have less than a minute left, but what do you expect Iran to do next?
Iran has been very disappointing, I would say, probably for Hezbollah at this time and many of its constituents. We have not seen any kind of real retaliation for many of the attacks that have taken place over the past few weeks and months. And I suspect that Iranian leaders are sort of scared to mount any kind of major retaliation. That said, there is a fear that if proxy militias are so weakened that Iran will look to deterrence from other means, like the nuclear, like their nuclear weapons arsenal.